morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Shan Zainab Namudu, and it's a blessing to be with you, whatever the time is, where you are at the time of hearing this message. Have you ever been in a place where you've been in a space or a season, or whether it's sickness or having a loved one that is sick, or a season of dryness, and it has prolonged to the point that you wonder, is there hope? You wonder, does God see me? You wonder, you have all those questions. And as I was thinking about that, as I was praying about that, over the weekend, I have the privilege of walking alongside young teens in our church. We were going over the book of John, and we were in chapter 5, and we came and we were looking at this man in chapter 5 who had been, who had an infirmity, who had been, in a season for over 38 years, and somehow mercy found him. So in John chapter 5, verse 1 to 9, it says, after this there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And now there is in Jerusalem the sheep gate, a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of sick people, blind, lame, paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain time into the pool and stirred up the water. Then whoever stepped in first, after the stirring of the water, was made well of whatever disease he had. Now a certain man was there who had an infirmity 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he already had been in that condition a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made whole?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. But while I'm coming, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Rise, take up your bed and walk." And immediately the man was made well, took up his bed and walked. And that day was the Sabbath. This setting, this happens, like we've been told, in Jerusalem during one of those Jewish leaders near the sheep gate, surrounded by, covered with different porches. This place had become a gathering, a waiting place, a place of hope, for the sick, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed, people waiting for a moment of healing. And among them was this man that we're not told his name, but we are told his condition. He had been an invalid for 38 years. That's not just a condition. It had become a lifestyle. It had become a lifetime of limitation. It had become a disappointment. It had become a repeatedness of hope deferred. Now, into this environment of pain, of waiting, of hopelessness and helplessness, because he says he doesn't have anyone to help him, Jesus walks in. Not because someone invited him, not because there was a service that was special, the healing service, miracle service, deliverance service, but because mercy already and always knows where to find broken people. What the scripture is telling us here is Jesus knows where we are. Now, I'm not sure where you are at. Maybe you feel unseen. Maybe you feel unheard. Maybe you feel overlooked. But as we think about this man who had been there for 38 years, people had come and gone. Someone asked, didn't he have relatives? Maybe after 2, 5, 10 years, they gave up. People moved on with their lives. But he stayed there, hopeless, And yet his presence there still said, I want to be whole. I want different. And I want you to know that just like that man was seen, while others overlook you, may not see your pain, Jesus does not overlook. He is seeing you. He knows how long you have been there. He knows the condition. Verse 6 says, when Jesus saw him lying there were many people, but Jesus noticed that one man. And this tells us that he's attentive. It tells us that he's not overwhelmed by crowds. You will not get lost in the crowds. You don't have to be up front. You don't have to have the front seat. You don't have to shout the loudest. You don't have to it doesn't matter. In that crowd, he saw him. He sees you as an individual, because the truth is you are never lost in a crowd with Jesus. Another thing to remember is Jesus knows our story. I was encouraged that the man did not have to say, hey, listen, I have been here. The scripture says he saw him and knew he had been there for a long time. Jesus knows our story before we explain it. The passage reminds us that God had seen, he had understood, and he had come specifically for him. Someone, like I said, someone asked me the other day, didn't he have relatives? Maybe he did. But before the man could say anything, Jesus already understood the story. He knew the years, he knew the disappointment, he knew the situation. Because the truth is, Jesus does not need your full report to care deeply. Human beings, us, we want the details. We want the details to determine if you're worthy of our help, if you've really suffered long, if you've really tried hard enough. We want to know, we want to contextualize everything to fit into the dimensions of what we think is deserving of our help. But Jesus, for him to care, he didn't need the full story. He had it. He has your story. He has your story. Do you want to get well? That's the powerful question that Jesus asked. At first glance, it seems obvious. It's almost obvious. Why do you ask me if I want to? I mean, he's been there for 38 years. Why would you ask if I want to be well? You see, Jesus is not just addressing the physical. He's addressing the will of the person. He's addressing the readiness. He's addressing, do you have the desire? He's calling for responsibility. What you've told me, other people have not helped you. I am here and I'm asking you, do you want to get well? God, it's not that I don't want to go to school, but I've not had an opportunity. I don't have school fees. You don't know where I come from. My husband, he cannot change. What is it? He's asking, do you want to get well? Do you want the conditions to change? Sometimes we become so used to survival that healing feels unfamiliar. And yet Jesus invites us to participate. It's not a pity party with Jesus. You cannot just be comfortable. You have to be ready for the unfamiliar. You have to be uncomfortable with where you're at, that you're willing to say, yes, I want to be. And isn't it amazing that we serve a God that is not limited by systems or limitations? He's greater. I have no one to help me. That's what the man said. Others get there before me. That's what the man said. Jesus did not stir the water. He spoke the miracle. Because you see, the truth is Jesus is not dependent on circumstances to move in your life. So take your eyes off your circumstances. They are facts. But facts change when they are subject to the truth. The truth of who Jesus is, of what he can do. So listen, long seasons do not cancel divine encounters or divine moments. 38 years, yet one encounter changed everything. One encounter rewrote the story. So what facts are holding you back? Are you willing? Are you willing to be unburdened? Are you willing to let him step into the situation? You might be saying, yes, I am willing. But he's been asking that question. Just like he asked that man. Are you willing to be well? Are you willing to be set free? Are you willing to be financially, to get out of financial debt? Are you willing? That man had to take up the mat and walk. So Jesus is asking, are you willing to take on the responsibility to receive your healing? Miracles happen on the other side of our obedience. Have you positioned yourself for your yes? Are you willing to do what you need done? What needs to be done for you to receive your healing? Are you willing to take up your mat and walk? He sees you. He knows you. He knows how long you've been there. But listen, your story is not over. It is not over. He's about to step into that story to restore dignity, to rebuild strength, to rewrite your identity. Are you willing? Or have you been there too long that you're comfortable, that you're okay with where you are. What was carried for 38 years was dropped in a moment. All he had to do was pick up his mat and walk. On the other side of our obedience lies our miracle. And mercy sees you. So when Jesus speaks, trust that there is strength in you to follow with obedience. When Jesus speaks, trust that healing will follow that encounter. When Jesus speaks, new life begins where hopelessness had once lived. Mercy will always find you. And he doesn't need the full story because he already knows it. What he needs is for you to trust and listen and obey what he is telling you to change where you are. Mercy said no 2,000 years ago to us living eternity without him. That same mercy, that same grace, that same Jesus is here to rewrite, to redeem, to restore your situation to the praise of his name and for your good. So my dear brother and sister, wherever you are, I want you to remember that mercy always finds us and he sees us and he has a name and he does not change and his name is Jesus. So God bless you, and I pray that you will let go, surrender to the one that is limitless, all your limitations. In Jesus' name, God bless you.